It needs all the things. Give it all the things.
Oh, perfect. You nailed it.
You can't bend physics, but you can always write better software.
And you're doing MPLS changes or BUP changes. May God be with you, right?
I always feel like I'm just a little fish in a sea of big fish.
I've got a nested 6-node vSAN.
Oh, guys. People, quite often think that they don't have anything to bring to the table when they absolutely do.
Everybody should. Anybody in IT that skips the phone stuff, it just hasn't earned it.
Okay, I lied. I have one more question.
On demand.
Correct.
Welcome to Gigacast 34 for Friday the 13th. Dun dun dun. Live to tape from the Gigacast headquarters. I'm Britton Johnson.
And live from my wife's home office, I'm Tony Reeves.
Oh, it's so nice of her to let you use her office.
Yeah, mine's still under construction, but it's getting there. I have walls now and electrical. We're getting there. And paint.
You know it's bad when I have to do a FaceTime tech support session with your construction project to try and help you out.
Hey, your tips came in handy, bro.
So
don't forget to turn off the breakers.
There he is.
The breakers.
So I had this ridiculous idea, and I'm just like, hey, Tony, let's see if we can get every single VMware podcast known to man all together for the holidays, because it's the holidays. And that's what people do. We get together with family that we don't like all that much.
Well, what could go wrong?
So why don't you like the guys from Virtually Speaking?
I don't. That's a joke. That's a really bad joke.
I'm just kidding.
Let's talk about politics on this episode.
Oh, no.
Oh, come on now.
Oh, boy.
So today, besides Mr. Reeves and myself, thank you guys for joining us. We have the one, the only, the Tech Village Master, Mr. Yadin Porter de Leon. Did I say your name fully right?
Yeah, you did actually. Yadin Porter de Leon. It's an ancient Hebrew name mixed with a slave name mixed with a Spanish name. So I'm the only one on the entire planet, just so everyone knows.
It's funny because nice. There's 8 other Britton Johnsons on Twitter, and I'm following one of them. Mm-hmm. And his Twitter handle is @thisisbritton, which is how I answer my phone.
Yeah, this is Britton.
This is Britton.
Yeah, it's like, so I never I go to everything and I always get Porter de Leon no matter what it is. I went to GitHub way late and I got Porter de Leon as a username for GitHub. You think that everything would have been taken for anyone, but nope, it's so rare. Just my last name, not even the Yadin part. So yeah.
You're
cool.
A snowflake.
Nice.
You're special. You're very special.
That is
That's a familiar voice.
No one's ever called me a snowflake before, Pete. Thank you very much. You're the first.
The most amazing half of the Virtual Speaking podcast.
Welcome
back to the
Pete
show.
Fletcher. Pete,
hey, Britton. Hey, Britton. How's it going, buddy?
Doing well. How are you, Pete?
Doing well, man. Happy to be here with this team of peers of podcasting for VMware. This is pretty exciting.
It is. Yeah. I wish your video.
Enough of this jibba jabba.
But
ta-da!
Yay!
There he is.
Okay, we hope this stays running. And then lastly but not leastly, Mr. Nick Corte, is it? Or is it Corta?
Cordy is fine.
Cordy?
I'll answer to any of those. Cordy, Corte, Court.
You're like the one that I haven't met before. And actually, I've never, I met you briefly at VMworld. I don't know if you remember. But
I've met everyone briefly at VMworld. Yeah. That's about the only way I can meet anyone.
But,
briefly.
But yeah. My only experience with you, Nick, is when I listened to the whole podcast that you interviewed Tony for 3 hours. And
yeah.
Whoa. That's a podcast.
We on Nerd Journey, when we interview people, it just turns into 2 episodes naturally because we start chasing them down interesting rabbit holes regardless of what we set for the schedule, and it seems to have worked okay so far.
Yeah, that's kind of our story too, where we just talk and I don't edit things because I'm lazy, and we just kind of put it all together, unlike Pete, who just cut, slice, slice, cut, and you produce a perfect episode every single time.
Mr. Hollywood.
That's funny.
Yeah,
that's funny.
Yeah,
well, yeah,
I'm probably a bigger offender than Pete is, though. I cut crazy hardcore, but that's probably the reason why I only come up with one episode every month. It was I'm basically editing it all month.
See, Tony and I only do one a month because we're just that lazy and that busy.
Yeah. Double lazy. I'm just gonna come out once a month, and I'm not gonna edit it. So here you go.
Oh, and I'm so lazy that I don't have any sort of a agenda for today's episode. So, You know,
there's enough ego on this show for like 15 agendas. I don't think we need
right.
an artificial one.
So, let's go around the horn quick and just at least talk about, who each and everybody is. Because Yadin, you've been around for a while. You came from somewhere to VMware. This isn't supposed to be.
Isn't everyone? That's everyone's story. I came from somewhere to VMware.
I wasn't born into VMware.
You should have been.
Yeah.
I don't know that everybody knows who you are and what you do. So why don't we just do a little bit of quick introductory sessions here and get that out of the way. So Yadin, please lead us off in that.
Oh yeah. So I'm here because the host of the Tech Village podcast, all about community and careers in IT, which is wonderful. I'm having just a great time. And I came back from a crazy background where I wasn't actually even in the VMware community at all. And I started getting into tech and I started listening to a couple podcasts. Hence, now I'm here podcasting and was inspired. And all these people were talking about being on Twitter. And I had no idea why you would be on Twitter and why you would listen to all these different things. And it connected me to all these fantastic people. So here I am in the VMware community now, working at VMware, running a podcast and talking to all these wonderful, fantastic gentlemen who are on the podcast.
But what is your actual day job though, Yadin?
There's so many things that I do, but my day job, the reason I have someone buys me a laptop. That's what I always say. So
yeah.
VMware buys me a laptop because they want me to talk to CIOs and make them love the VMware, the VMware.
How do I book your time as an SE?
As an SE to book, you want me to do it because I do some CIO whispering. Actually, that's my brand. I'm the CIO whisperer at VMware, and I'm actually helping Dell Technologies CIO whisper as well. So it's just a big happy family.
Okay.
Now, is this your whispering voice right now, or is that different than your?
No, my whispering voice is very different. But I am. Hey, quick, total shameless. I am launching the CIO Exchange podcast in February. Next year. So big deal. Wow. I've already got 11 episodes recorded.
You heard it here.
Wow. Yep. Everywhere from the CIO of ADP to Basque, our lovely CIO, and Dell Tech.
It's not going to be an ASMR, is it?
You had to say that, didn't
you? Pete, you are really cutting bad out. You're gonna have to kill it.
Yeah.
Shame on me. I had to Google that.
Yeah.
Oh man.
I had to Google something too. Like there was one question like the V All-Stars cards, and there was some question on the back of it, some platform I could have Google it. And on the back of the card, like I actually answered on the back of the V All-Stars card. And like, I had to Google the answer to this question.
Yeah, I had to do that for a couple of questions on that card because I'm just like, I'm not a coder. I don't any of that stuff. And so I'm just like, I have no idea. I'm just going to pick something.
There was a very DevOpsy, more like SRE kind of, year this year. But my favorite was the end of like, what's your biggest weakness, which is my favorite, interview question. And it's like coming up with clever answers on the back of V All-Star cards. That's my big weakness.
I really wanted to use the Michael Scott answer, but I just, my biggest weakness is I work too hard because I care so much.
Yeah. Are we done with intros? Did I just break that all up? Did we not even make it through intros before I started ranting?
If nobody knows who I'm the next guy on the screen. So if nobody knows who I am, I'm Britton Johnson. I'm a VMware.
Yes. If you're listening to the Gigacast, you don't know who Britton Johnson is. There's a serious problem. You have a marketing issue.
I know.
No. Let me help you with that. I'm in marketing.
That'd be great. Okay, Nick. Since on my screen, Pete just fell to the bottom. So Nick, why don't you go next?
So Nick Orty, VMware Solution Engineer. I am a technical generalist across the portfolio, not a specialist like Britton and Tony, covering a little bit of everything.
You're a core SE.
Core SE or account solution engineer.
Where in the world are you? We know Yadin's in California. Where are you?
I am in Fort Worth. A lot of people say, "Oh, you're in Dallas, right?"
Fort Worth. No, Fort Worth is not Dallas. It is.
That's right.
Just like saying you're in Round Rock.
Came from the customer side.
If you're in Round Rock, you're not in Austin. Okay.
Exactly. Just like you should never say someone from Australia or someone from New Zealand is from Australia. Don't ever make that mistake. Did that once.
Yeah. Don't do that. Don't do that. All right, and then I don't think Pete needs any introduction, does anybody else?
No, that's horrible.
Give him his due.
Pete, what have you been up to these days?
I have people skills. I am good at being people. Don't you understand it?
Yeah. So.
So what did you say you do?
Yeah. So yeah, my name is Pete. I work at VMware 4 years now, and before that, I was at NetApp, and I was a storage nerd there, and I did a podcast there called the Tech on Tap podcast, and yeah, I've been doing the Virtually Speaking podcast at VMware for about 3 years now. So yeah, I'm enjoying it. Love these guys. This is a lot of fun. I'm looking at a lot of pretty faces. Sorry, the video. I can't get my video. Apparently, there's a bandwidth issue. I don't know.
Something's going on because even your audio is still weird. But
could be your mesh network.
I think Darth Pete is so cool.
We will push through and power on.
I prefer Kylo Fletcher.
Face meltingly awesome.
You can just sit there, but your clips sound amazing.
Yes,
the clips sound fantastic.
Sounds amazing.
Yeah.
All right, so I'll just use clips the rest of the thing.
Like the Bumblebee from the Transformers on.
That's fantastic.
Pete is right.
Yes.
I love the soundboard. I need to get myself a little soundboard.
I had one, and then I just reformatted my old Mac, so I don't have.
I know. I had one that was on. I had a signal sound bus, and I had everything running through my soundboard on my last laptop, and then I got this new laptop, and I couldn't be bothered. Just couldn't be.
All right. Well, here's what I did today. I the last 2 days I've been just going gangbusters, doing customer visits, and I hung out with a really cool guy named Paul Mancuso for the last couple of days.
Paul.
He's a technical director for in our NSBU division, and he's going to be.
Did you say NRA and SBU?
NSBU.
Okay, sorry.
Not to be confused with SVU.
Yeah, and so I'm just like I literally drove from Champaign, Illinois, home, which is like 3.5 hours. After a meeting this morning, and walked in the door and turned on this episode recording, and here we are. So,
Corp Thug Life.
Yes,
as Amy Lewis would say.
Yeah, I was going to say that's Amy Lewis's tagline.
We're missing in this one.
Yeah, just the one person who's not here. Well, there's a few people that aren't here. Who's not here? Maybe we do a little. Let's pour out a 40, a little 40 for all our homies that aren't here.
Yeah. So Yadin, you have a couple of people who help you out. Who are they? And
Matt Oswalt and Lauren Malhoit, who both, oddly enough, are working together now. But yes, they're my co-hosts on the Tech Village. Two amazing, awesome people. It's funny, actually, Lauren Malhoit, former co-host of the In Tech We Trust podcast. Spoiler, not a spoiler really, but we're actually doing a reunion episode. Where Nigel and the rest of the gang are actually going to get together. If I can beat them into submission, which I shall. and we're missing Pete's.
We're missing 2 Johns, so
a couple Johns.
Yeah. So, Nick, I know I don't know anything about John White. Tell me about your friend, Mr. White.
So John White, it was his idea to do the Nerd Journey podcast where we give people the career advice we wish we'd been given early in our careers. He is also the owner and operator of a mentoring school, the John White School of Mentoring. So if anybody out there needs a mentor, send a tweet out to @NerdJourney for pricing and packaging.
This is like the most meta episode I've ever recorded.
But
this is podcasting
John is a former
podcasters.
VMware SE.
Is this a real thing, or is this an inside joke with the John White School of Mentoring?
Oh, it's absolutely real. You can hear about it on this episode.
I made that same assumption. I'm like, this must be a fake thing. Yeah. John White School of Mentoring.
That hurts me, guys. Anyway, John was a former VMware SE, and now he works for Google as an SE.
Wow.
Out in the Bay Area.
I've
Super
heard
smart
of that company
dude.
before. Google. They've got a little campus down in the valley.
Yeah.
I hear you can get free breakfast burritos there. It's nice.
I didn't know that, but
actually, I was there just a few months ago. And yes, everything is still free.
I'm hardwired now, so hopefully I have.
Yes, there he is. He's back.
Awesome.
Look at this.
So, Pete, I've never heard the backstory of how you and John Nicholson got connected to start the Virtually Speaking podcast.
Oh, okay, sure. So I got hired at VMware to do tech marketing for virtual volumes in vSAN, and they said, we'd really love you to do that podcast thing that you did at NetApp. So I was like, well, let's not put it on my job description because I don't know if I'll do it. I don't know anybody yet that I would want to do it with at VMware. And I truly believe that if you're going to have a good podcast, there needs to be some chemistry. And I told him, quite frankly, I don't know anybody that I would want to do a podcast with just yet. And so I go to Palo Alto for my very first team meeting, and I'm meeting John for the first time. And and I had already said to myself, I'm not going to ask anybody. I'm going to wait a while. And after about like 3 or 4 hours talking to John, I was like, hey, you want to do a podcast?
Nice.
I was like, this dude is hilarious.
That's awesome. That's like,
he's smart and he's witty and he's got a lot of funny stories. I mean, he's got stories about like stuff that just kills me. Like he really does. He's got a wide level of experience in a bunch of different areas. And so I thought he would make for an interesting co-host. And so, I truly believe in, having that chemistry for a podcast. And so I kind of felt like he was a good mix because he and I are very different. We both love technology, but he's like super, super deep technical.
Right.
And so while I'm technical, I try to, my goal on our podcast is to, I'll try to drive the direction of the podcast and sort of keep it into be focused on the format. And John, it's more like, I got him hooked up like a fire hydrant. I just basically turn on the fire hose and spew technical goodness. And then when I'm done with him, I lower it and keep moving. So
it's fantastic. That like reminds me of like this one story, like when I was in grade school and I just met some kid. I'm like, you want to spend the night in my house? Like you.
I do like John and I are good friends. We're obviously he's in Houston, I'm in Texas. We don't hang out, but he's a good guy. I mean, honestly, ever since I've been at VMware now, there are a lot of really cool people at VMware. I mean, the community is good. The internal community is really good. So when I met John, I knew right away that I wanted to do a podcast with him. But how about you and Tony? Because I knew Tony before I knew you, Britton. So I'm curious how that.
All right, I've been doing enough yakking. Tony, it's your turn.
Yeah, so Britton and I have known each other for 25 years now, I think.
Way too long.
Yeah, I mean, we got to know each other when we were back in middle school. So essentially, we grew up. We came from different points in our careers to end up at VMware, obviously. But what was it? Man, almost 2.5 years ago now, Britton. He wanted to kind of do this podcast thing, and he asked if I wanted to do it with him, and at that point I was already doing a ton of public outreach, a ton of community stuff, and public talks at VMUGs and everything. I'm like, yeah, let's go for it, because I was all about building brand and helping community and getting my name out there, and it's been a wild ride. Can't believe we're on episode 34 already.
Tony, I just want to say, I know those who are listening can't see this, but I'm looking on the video and your sunroom looks absolutely fabulous. I love it. It's very nice.
Thank you. Yeah, it's fun. Little slow tour here.
So for those listening, Tony is panning his camera, so we're getting a full view. This is.
I actually have to go to the video.
This is amazing.
Oh my goodness.
So, all right. Here's a question, and whoever wants to answer this, I don't know what's so funny that Nick is laughing, unless it's a highly delayed video.
He's like, he had to mute himself because he's laughing. He's on mute now.
I guess the one thing I want to ask is what's going on with each of your shows, and what's happening. Are you guys going to try to do anything different next year? And beyond that, if there's one thing you hate about how your show is now, what is it, and how, and what would you change about it?
It's getting
one of those two things. Pick. What are you going to talk about next year, and what do you hate? Or both, if you want to answer them. I want to go to Nick first on this.
Is it sad that I was hoping you would pick me first so I'd have more time to think? No, it's okay.
Because you have the Einstein painting behind you. That's why.
Yeah.
Oh, right. We'll see if I can get some inspiration from Albert on this one. But I think for us, it's actually hard to do interviews on the air if you're not used to doing that. And I think that we could get a little bit tighter in our interviews. Hopefully, nobody thinks we babble on forever and ever. In the beginning of the podcast, I think John's initial idea was to tailor it more to the SE community, but after we started putting some episodes out there, it became more catering to technology career progression overall. So, we've talked about a number of different things, and I think we might hit on some of the more softer side of career progression as we move forward, especially in terms of like mental health, physical health. I know there have been some other episodes on that, different shows, but trying to get people to be on the show who may not even necessarily work in technology, but their advice and experience would be relevant to anyone in technology in the career progression light, I think is going to be valuable.
That would have been great if I didn't just bang my microphone.
I was like, what was that?
That's lovely.
Oh, classic.
Well, that's and I feel your pain there, Nick, because like we got Tony and I did a mental health episode, and it was tough, man.
Yeah, that was back in May, I think.
Yeah, and it was really, I think it went over really well. I think it went well overall, but it's tough when you start to get out of your box and you start to talk about stuff that, in some cases as a technology person, you have no business talking about.
Yeah, we had a marketing professional on the last 2 episodes, and we were talking
advisory. This is not advice. This is helpful hints and education.
Right. Yeah. Like just because I have a internet radio show doesn't mean I actually know what I'm talking about.
It's like Adam Sandler on The Wedding Singer. I have microphones. You're going to listen to every word I have to say.
Yeah. That's going to be the intro clip right there.
Yeah. That's awesome.
But I think when you do technology, and then for us, we talk about career progression on the podcast, it flexes a little bit different set of muscles and just makes you open your mindset to a new way of thinking every time we talk to someone.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. I never had like a real goal for our show. I just kind of wanted to talk to people and learn stuff. That was really my whole thing.
No, I think that's actually really honest, and it's funny. That was one of the reasons why I started the very first podcast that no one's ever heard of, which is the one I started when I was at Druva. And I always tell people this. I'm like, fail in obscurity. And I did that very much. So I failed in obscurity and did lots of podcasts, and they were just absolutely horrible. And the one again and again and again until I got better and slowly better and better. And I did it specifically because, how many people will just come and say, yeah, I'll talk to you because you have a podcast. Like, hey, I've got this podcast.
Oh, right.
Be a guest. And it's just like the CEOs of I wanted to talk to the CEO of Platform 9. I'm like, oh yeah, CEO Platform 9, really cool, company. And he's like, yeah, I'll talk to you because you have a podcast. If I was just some guy walking up the street, he'd be like, who are you? Go away. But you have a podcast. So somehow now, I get to talk to, executives at RSA, at like Okta and, and all these different companies, just because I had this random podcast that no one had even heard of, but it was just a great excuse to talk to people. So totally selfish. That was one of the big reasons. There were so many amazing people, so many smart people. I wanted to engage with them and figure out how to work with them and pick their brains. And that's why I started.
So what do you, besides the new show that you're starting, Yadin, what else is happening with Tech Village next year? And
Tech Village? Well, we're really going to dig super, super laser guided on a series that we actually just started, which is a series on getting hired. So we talked to a hiring manager and what they were looking for. We just did a recruiter episode, why I work with a recruiter.
That's cool.
For a lot of really sort of digging deep into resumes and interviews and all the different stuff and different pieces. I wanted to do that, but at the same time, just, talking to interesting people about interesting topics as well. And we cover mental health and burnout and work-life balance and all that stuff. Because it really is just going to treat the whole person. So that's, besides the CIO Exchange podcast where I talk to, people about, digitally transforming all the things, Tech Village is really going to just deliver on that, community, career, and get people to that next level.
I think that's a good point too, because there's a lot of people that have been in the industry a while, and we take it for granted that everybody that's coming up through the ranks knows the proper way to interact with some of these people in some of these situations when you're trying to grow your career, trying to get interviews, etc. I think that's a really good thing to touch on there, Yadin.
I'm trying. one podcast at a time.
Yes,
Changing
yes,
the
sir.
world. It's we're all trying to do.
Before I jump to you, I just have to say, like, the thing that like I gained from starting a podcast was learning how to have conversations with people that I don't know, which is kind of like job interview skills, right? And so that's kind of my big career advice for people nowadays is like, if you want to get better at interviewing, don't just do random interviews. Start a podcast and talk to people that you don't know.
And the bar, you set the bar a little bit higher, and then like, oh my god, people are going to listen to this. I have to deliver something of value. I have to have a good interaction, so I better try.
I got to deliver some value to more than just me and the person in front of me.
Yeah.
So that's
I have people skills.
There you go.
I'm good at dealing with people. Can't you understand it?
So Pete, what's going on? Are you going to add some new sound effects to the show next year?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, that's the goal. More sound clips. Just kidding. No,
Those are your OKRs.
No, we actually don't spend too many time on the sound clips, but in these types of episodes, absolutely, they're more fun. But on that note, like in terms of podcasts, I'm glad that some of you guys do some of these more you focusing on career and different aspects. I think that I think those things are really important. I remember Tech Village did a really good episode once on getting laid off, and I forget the girl's name, but that was just amazing.
Nikki Acosta.
That
was one of our most popular, but surviving layoffs, and she was amazing.
Yeah.
She just dug deep. She dug deep. It was great.
That was good stuff. And so like for us, like I just remember even when I was back doing my first podcast at another company, initially we started a podcast because we were curious about certain tech, right? So we wanted to just know the tech, and we didn't profess to be these, radio personalities. That's not why we were doing it. We really just wanted to know different technologies. We wanted to create almost like a resource for people to understand specific technologies or solutions. And so we weren't out there to be like, hey, we want you guys to like us and think we're funny and do all this. We really just wanted to do the tech. And we got some feedback early on about that, saying, oh, I really like that you guys just focus on tech. So we let that drive us for a while. I do like the one-offs. I think they're fantastic, but I think the swim lane that we found ourselves in is just really like trying to spend a 30-minute podcast, which is why we do the editing, but get about a 30-minute or so podcast on a specific technology or episode. So if somebody's looking to get more knowledge about something, they just go to that. And I don't think there's anything wrong with some of those other styles and formats. As a matter of fact, we've done a couple of them. I did some career days episodes in the past.
The blogging one was great.
Yeah, the blogging one.
Like, hold all my calls. I'm blogging.
Yeah, that one was really good.
Yeah, we do those one-offs. And it's funny that you mentioned that, because a lot of folks will find those that are not even in tech, and then they'll reach out and say, oh, I really like that episode, but they're not even in tech. So I think if you're looking for subscribers, I think those wider topics are really important. But who knows, maybe that's what we'll do in future. But for now, like the swim lane that we've chosen is to try to humbly stick to topics, whether it's like this week we did one on the Oracle in general. I don't know much about Oracle, and I know there was a big announcement at Oracle Open World, and so we talked to some folks, and so we just built an episode just sort of what's going on with Oracle for VMware, and that was the episode. And that's that's just all we do. So I will say that we've made a tradition every year since we've been doing it to finish our final episode to have like a fun episode. So last year we did a game show. And we invited some guests to come in, and we actually gave away some good swag. We actually gave away some.
Oh, yeah.
But I don't know what we're gonna do for our final episode this year. We're still trying to figure it out, and here it is, just about the end of the year. So we better get our butts in gear.
One thing that I really admire, because being a co-host myself, I understand the effort that goes into it, is your cadence. Being able to put an episode every week, and then you're doing editing on top of that, and the guests that you get, and the technical detail that you guys get into, and the value you bring to the community through the show. I've always really admired that, because it's a ton of work. For those that don't know what goes on behind the scenes, it's a lot of work to line things up and get people going on, take the time out of your day and schedule it. And it's just a lot.
It's intense.
Thanks, man. Yeah, you guys know it is a lot of work, and it gets easier when you do it more frequently. I think there's that cadence builds a little muscle memory, and you just sort of you just start churning them out. Like for me, we've got a good list of folks that want to come on, so that usually works itself out. There's not a ton of time on that. The actual interviewing, the recording is easy. The editing becomes like it's actually, I don't know, it's like therapeutic for me. Like I just like to, like it's dumb work, like I like to, you ever do certain tasks you need to really be thinking hard. Like if you're troubleshooting or if you're building a lab or you're trying to work something out and find a problem, that's like a brain struggle. But like editing a podcast is just like, it's like, I don't know, it's like smoking a cigarette or something. I don't smoke, but it's just like, it's relaxing, it's like
podcasting is the new smoking.
Yeah.
Surgeon General's warning, podcasting may become a habit.
But for the record, I did not inhale.
Mm-hmm. May form addictive behavior.
Yeah. That's awesome.
Subscribing to the Gigacast, it may become addictive.
I actually have a question for all of you. If you have someone who wants to come on your show, do they normally bring you an idea, or do they just say, I want to be on the show?
How
do you approach that?
I've had both. Like I had, a couple of people have approached me, and I've only allowed one of them on after vetting them with other people that know them. And because I'm just like it's kind of weird to get approached by somebody like that, and just like, yeah, I want to be on your show, and I don't want to talk about this, and I'm like, okay, I have no idea who you are, and I'm not going to just invite some random stranger on my show who might
really.
My favorite is when like the publicists come. I get hit with publicists now on a regular basis. Where like I'm the publicist for Yada Yada Personality, and she's just published a new book, and she would love to be on your show. I'm like, who are you?
Yeah.
What would you talk about?
I haven't hit that level yet.
Yeah, it's kind of weird.
We definitely get a lot of requests as well. So more technical people, like from VMware people, but also other companies that will reach out, and we've actually been we've been approached for sponsorship multiple times, but it's not a road we want to go down. It's I think I'm not against sponsorship for other people if they want to do it, but personally for us, I feel like it would break. Like we don't want to break what we have. We want to keep it organic. We don't want to be driven by somebody saying that we have to do a certain thing, because ours is not owned by VMware, much like yours, right? It's just we're passionate about this stuff. It's what we want to talk about, and so that's kind of where we stay in the same wheelhouse, if you will, but we're not driven. We don't have to talk about certain things, and so I never want to get to a point where but we do get a lot of requests for people to come on, and a lot of times they end up coming on. So like we'll talk to, as long as it's relevant, we're not going to talk to somebody about something that's completely not related to VMware in one way or another. So but we do get those requests.
Don't take the sponsorships from the Koch brothers. They'll try.
Yeah. Well, we definitely have been offered, but it's just a weird. And then the other thing is that sometimes people want to come on the podcast and you don't want to interview them, and then that gets weird, because then it's like I haven't been very good at figuring that one out. I kind of ghost them a little bit.
That's a really interesting question. Have anybody recorded an interview with somebody and it went so bad you didn't use it?
That happened. Well, that happened to me. I recorded an episode with someone else that happened so bad they never used it. I think it was Pete, actually.
Yeah, a couple of times it's happened to us, and I don't want to say who, but just kidding.
Because I've heard of that before, where like you get somebody on and then they're like half drunk, or
or just they're just incoherent. There's been one episode that I just basically politely just didn't release it. And they never got back to me, and I think they had the same feeling that they just shanked it. So they're like, they didn't follow up. Hey, where was that episode? They never.
So if it's a full episode, I usually get those to work because we can drive them. Like if we say we want to talk to somebody on a specific topic, it's going to be a 30-minute episode. We can, between John and I or whoever's helping me that week, we can get what we need out of the episode. But what usually ends up happening is we'll do VMworld, shorter micro interviews, and a lot of those they tend to sit in the can longer, if you will, because they're, I can't fit it into a full episode that makes sense, or somebody just was super nervous and it just didn't work out well. But then they'll be the ones that are like hitting me up going, hey, so when are you going to publish that episode? I'll let you know.
I know Sanjay's hitting you up saying, hey, Pete, come on. Can we record that during the...
Sanjay's
Do any of you actually get nervous when you record?
Sanjay? Oh, yeah, I've had Sanjay on a couple times. He's good.
Yeah, you and I think talking to Sanjay's in the VMworld video that's coming up.
Yeah.
Yes.
He's great. The first time we interviewed him, they were like, you have to be respectful of his time and everything. I'm like, absolutely. So we're ready to just like sit down and turn the recorder on and just go. Sanjay wanted to talk for like 15 minutes about podcasting in general. Before we even started, he was like, what do you guys do? And how do you do that? And what is that thing you have? And how many downloads do you get? And what is this about? Like he was like super into it. And I was like, okay, are we going to get to this interview?
Yeah. Oh, he's great. He's super
He's
fun.
awesome. Yeah.
Bask is another guy. If you get a chance to talk to Bask too, talk to him. He's just fantastic too.
Nick, what was your question?
My question was, did any of you actually get nervous when you podcast with people, whether it's interview, non-interview, since you've been doing it for a while? I'm just curious.
I don't know. Tony, we need you to talk more.
I don't think that I have more recently, but when we initially started it, I did. And I think some of the times that I've been interviewed on other podcasts, like Pete, the first time I was on your show, I was nervous as crap. I don't know.
Really?
I don't know if you could tell or not.
No, not at all.
He's like, I've hit the big time now.
Yeah. So that was a little nerve wracking, but I had some other people listen to it and said they thought it was good. But
yeah, you were great.
I appreciate that. I think that more towards the beginning, I was pretty nervous, but it's a lot easier now. You get used to it, like Pete said.
It's definitely a mind shift at first because, after we get done recording these things, I am amped. I mean, I'm just like, it takes me a good 30 minutes to calm down afterwards.
So you're gonna be super pumped.
That's funny.
Oh yeah, and then but beforehand, I felt like I should have been really nervous before interviewing Pat, but Pat is so chill and such a cool guy that he instantly just sets you at ease just being around him.
Nah, he's mine.
And I'm just I'm like, okay, this is going to be really, really fun. And so Tony and I are sitting in a room in this, hotel conference room with Pat for 15 minutes. And we're just I'm like, oh my gosh, we're sitting in the room with Pat Gelsinger for 15 minutes. And we can ask him anything we want. And I really wanted to go off script, but I didn't. And I'm just this was before I was an employee, and so I'm like, don't treat me.
So you weren't totally tethered, so it wasn't like this is my boss's boss's boss.
And I couldn't screw it up too bad because Tony was 2 days from starting.
Yeah, I was only a week away from my start date at that time.
Pat puts you at ease. That's the thing. And so when you get comfortable with him, I got a little nervous with him because he puts you at ease, and we start talking. We interview him every year, but 1 year, I think it was last year, he started. It was the year he had the tattoo on his arm for VMware, and so he starts going into this conversation while we were interviewing him about how he was in Intel and how we were coming out with ESXi on ARM, and then he was saying how some of the folks at VMware were a little nervous to talk to him about doing this ESXi on ARM project and this and that, and he was like, and so because he's the Intel guy and all this stuff, and then so Pat goes, and John says, yeah, well, did you show him your tattoo, your other
arm?
tattoo? And he goes, yeah, that's on another body part. I was like, okay. Do I have to bleep my CEO here? Yeah, it was kind of funny.
There was only probably one interview that I got nervous on, and that was and it was just right before too, and it was because it was video too, and so that was my Michael Dell interview. And so when I was talking to Michael, I got just a little bit, and then I settled myself, and it was very much the same thing where I started chatting with him, and he's like, my parents wanted me to be a doctor. I'm like, my parents wanted me to be a lawyer, and then we just started to chat about just whatever.
Life. Yeah,
just life, and he connects with you people really, really well. I mean, he's incredibly good at that. He just connects with you as a human extremely well. And it was in about 15 seconds, and I wasn't nervous anymore. But that was probably the only one that I came close to really kind of get nervous in the interview process.
I think just because I'm a technology guy and that's my thing, I get more nervous. For the last episode we just did with Kyle Ruddy, I'm more nervous talking to guys like him who are super crazy smart in areas that I will never understand. And I just, call it imposter syndrome or call it just plain me not knowing anything and just looking like an idiot. is what I get nervous about.
That's a great reason why you started the podcast, though, is you got to put yourself in those situations where you get to talk to those people where you're like, you feel like you're out of your depth, but all of a sudden you find out through the conversation that you can have a conversation with someone like that, even on the topic, even though you're not an expert, and then you end up being better for it.
Yes, and it's actually like prepared me leaps and bounds for what I do now as an SE. Like this morning, I had a conversation with a customer where at some point I was completely out of my depth as a networking guy. And I'm just like, yeah, I don't know. I don't know the answer to this scenario. And I'm just like, I'm sure I know we have people who do, so we'll get that figured out.
Just like a good SE, you're like, let me get back to you on that.
Right.
I want to research that.
Profoundly
Sure that I provide. I love it. Right on time with the soundboard. Absolutely fantastic. But I have to say that because I'm probably like the least technical person on this podcast, and I've been in situations in which we're deep, technical conversations are being had, and I've had to convince them that the company I'm working for is the best company to possibly solve this technical problem, and somehow, I dance,
right.
I think with the pet interview, I was more nervous ahead of time than actually during it, because he's such a professional speaker and he can kind of talk you through something and, like you said earlier, put you at ease. I was like, oh man, we have these questions I had written out like on a little notepad that I was going to keep in front of me. I had a bunch of questions written out, and I read a couple of them, but other than that, it was easier to just talk to him. He just made it easy.
So what do you guys do? That's a good question for you guys. What do you do to prepare for your interviews? Like, do you have a format? Do you come up with an idea for a podcast for any of you guys? Like, you have this idea for a podcast. What's the next step for you before you actually hit record?
Try to get a guest.
Excellent step. First, this is a great See, we should have started this podcaster, episode about podcasting. Number one, get a guest.
Well, that's what Tony and I did for like our first 9 episodes, was talk to each other, and real quickly we realized we don't know enough about this stuff, and nobody wants to listen to people who don't know anything.
Well, we started with our basics. It's stuff that we knew well, right? I started on vSAN. He started on NSX. We did the general vSphere thing, and then we did
we ran out
of multi-backup. Yeah, we ran a backup episode, and then it became like, we need to add more value to this podcast and get some smart people on here. And once we started getting more guests on, I think that really shaped up the podcast and got more of a good cadence going with people wanting to be on.
We kind of stumbled into topics.
Yeah, we stumbled into our formula, and I think it really works.
Yeah,
right. Dean, since
my preparation, actually, it's funny because we usually have an editorial. It's just odd because some in the beginning when I was like just starting out, I was fumbling my way through it, and now we actually have a big editorial. Like, here's all the themes we want to hit, here's the topics we want to hit, and then we don't do the episodes until we find the right guest, until we find the right person who can talk on that topic. And every once in a while, there's an opportunistic one that comes up and says, "Oh, we have to talk to this person," and we grab them and we do it. But most of the time, we have really specific topics, specific themes we're trying to hit, and trying to have an editorial and push that. And if you actually look, we have a spreadsheet. Believe this, but we do. We have a spreadsheet.
Ooh,
yes, we do.
You probably have analytics too, don't you?
Yeah. Oh, I'm all into that. I'm all up in the data. I'm all
for that?
Up in the data. Yeah.
We could figure out how to use Wavefront for that, Tony.
We could.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'll use some other products I won't mention because they're competitive products. So I won't.
Yeah, and the other thing we try to get a rough outline, or at least 3, 4, or 5 questions ready to go, so we have a rough idea. But that's all we do. And sometimes we go off script and we don't really pay attention to the actual questions. Just kind of see how things flow naturally.
Oh, yeah, organically. Once you get the person on the topic, it's really then you kind of let it loose.
Yep.
And conversationally so much better. I swear to God, and this is with video especially. I shot one video like with Basque, and he wasn't doing a script. And he's like, I'm usually better when I cuff it. I'm like, why don't you cuff it? Like, no, you do the script. And the script, he did this teleprompter thing. And I'm like, we're never doing this again, Basque. You're cuffing it from now on. You're not ever reading a teleprompter again.
No. Know your strengths.
Wow.
So, Basque, if you're listening to this, you're fantastic at cuffing it. Just so you know.
Nick, I think Pete's question is to you next.
So, remember what you said about getting amped after you get off the show, Britton?
Yeah.
So, that happens to me too. And I think after we do a podcast on something, it gives me ideas for 5 other things. And so we'll jot those down in a brainstorming OneNote and just kind of go through those. Okay, can we do this on our own? Or do we need to get a guest? But actually, the way I look for guests is to pay attention to people in the community or the greater network of folks that I know. What situations have they been in? What stories can they tell? And so I'm like actively watching, thinking, and conversations that I have with people. Okay, we could relate that to career, and here's what the discussion should be. Here's my idea of the outline. Would you be on the podcast? And then we try to set them at ease about it. I think Pete gave me that idea when I saw him at a VMUG earlier in Boston about sending them a rough outline, having them give some input on it, and that's really helped.
Yeah. We try to let our guests drive the topic, and we want to understand what we try to keep it to 3 points. They don't have to be exactly 3, but we try to keep it to 3 points. So this way it works into a 30-minute or so episode. But yeah, and then we never let the guest say everything before we hit record. They'll start saying, "Oh, I want to say this. I want to say," well, hold on, keep it, keep that thought. We want to keep it organic. But we try to we let them come with the points so they can, because when people have already prepared, they know what they want to say. I think they make better guests when they understand where they want to go.
And 9 times out of 10, I found when people say something once, the second time, if they have to do it over, it doesn't come out right.
It's never as good.
Yeah.
Like this was the second time we recorded that. That's why this is not good. It was really good the first time.
Yes, for all of those who are listening to this, this is take 2. The first one was amazing.
I told you, Britton, we should have just done the first one.
I only screwed up the intro once.
The things that happen before you press record.
Yeah.
We'll do it live.
I have to give I have to give you guys kudos on like just the sheer amount of notes that you put out with your podcast, because I don't do anything.
The show notes. Yes.
My laziness.
You'll find extensive show notes in our postings.
Like, Nick, I feel like you guys like basically have like a court stenographer taking like
that would be me.
Detailed notes, and I'm like, can I hire Nick to do this for our show?
Pricing and packaging to come, my friend.
I think Zoom does that anyway.
Is that a package deal with the John White School of Mentoring?
Mm-hmm. We'll have to see.
Podcasting show notes as a service.
Structures for Q1.
Yeah, because like that's the one thing like I know we don't do at all because I don't do it. And
I know you don't, because I've mentioned several times, yeah, we'll put that in the notes, and then there are no notes.
Yeah. Well, I'm already producing the show and everything else, Tony. Maybe you could do the notes.
That's great.
Ooh.
I always love that when they say that'll be in the show notes, and it never shows up in the show
notes.
Yeah.
Hey, Dean, do you think you could use your whisper voice to maybe calm these guys down so a fight doesn't break out?
Mm-hmm.
See,
yes. It doesn't work because the whisper voice is all about talking about Hamilton tickets and going to the Hamptons.
That's what I think is missing from tech podcasts is we don't do like the sports radio thing where 2 guys are yelling at each other in anger.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I apologize for talking while you were talking. It's a great Daily Show segment.
The gentleman yields. The gentleman yields to Yadin.
Well, I've had a phenomenal time talking to all of you. You see what I just did there? See, that's
that's a cue to you have to leave, right?
Yeah, exactly.
I hear outro music coming up.
Trick there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
All right.
I'm just going to start headbanging going, boule, boule.
Yeah.
Yes.
Bump, bump, bump. That's for my podcast.
Stay tuned as the journey continues.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
all you tech villagers out there.
Well, again, thank you guys for coming on. This has been a lot of fun. And what are you all doing for Christmas? Are you going anywhere? Are you traveling? Are you staying home?
I am having a big shindig after Christmas. I don't have any family over for the days because we fight over who gets who for when. So I just basically have a big holiday, party right before New Year's, and we're the house that has it, and so 30, 40 people, whatever, come over.
We're not going anywhere either.
Trying to feed them.
But,
yeah, we're staying home.
Yeah, we were Eurotrash for the past 6 weeks, my wife and I, because we're empty nesters finally. Woohoo!
Whoa! Get out of here, Sam.
Woohoo! Yes, that's right. We are. We did it. We did it. Taking a bow.
He kept them alive. They're in one piece. Deliver them to the world. Well done, my friend. Well done.
So, we're definitely staying home for Christmas. Looking forward to that.
Cool.
We're going to stay home some, but we're going to travel a couple hours here and there in the Texas area to see different family members. When both parents are divorced or remarried, you have a lot of family to see.
Oh, my children are so wealthy in grandparents. It's insane.
Wow.
That's why we don't buy gifts for our kid, because their grandparents will do it.
Well,
just have
this episode will be then the Christmas gift to all of our listeners.
You know, I was hoping we were going to nerd out on gear. I don't know if we have enough time. I know we're running late, but I was definitely curious. Gear, what do you know? It is a podcast. These are the guys.
I can keep going, Pete. If we just need to say goodbye to Udine, we can say he can go.
There you go. Yeah.
If you need to peace out, Udine, it's been great having you.
It has been wonderful, gentlemen.
I'm grateful for the time.
Goodbye, guys. Merry Christmas.
See you later.
Peace out.
But yeah,
this is the part where we talk about Yadin now. Go ahead, Yadin.
he's waiting to see what we say about him.
What better Christmas present can there be than getting somebody signed up for the John White School of Mentoring? I don't see anything else out there.
I want to see pricing and packaging first, actually.
I didn't know this podcast was sponsored. The John White School of Mentoring. Wow.
So back to Pete's question on gear. What kind of gear are you using, Pete? I know you're using PR40 microphones that sound amazing.
Oh yeah, the Heils for sure. We use the Heils. We use John and I have different ideas on the. I have a Zoom that I use that I plug my XLR cables into, but I also have a. Let's see. Let me move the camera here. I have this stationary one that I use. It's I even forget the brand. Is
that a Behringer?
Yeah, it is a Behringer. Yeah. It's a Behringer, and so I use that one for the stationary, and then I use the Zoom H6 when I'm on the road. Those are great because the H6. Do you guys ever seen the H6?
Yeah, I think I've seen it.
Yeah, those are great because it actually has 4 XLR inputs on it, so you can have different, separate recordings too. So when you hit record, you have different tracks, so you can really isolate stuff. But then it also has another microphone on top that has like the mix, the stereo, where you can just do field recording. So that thing I've found to be really helpful in the field, but it also has a pretty high quality sound. The Zoom H6 for sure is something I like that. And for recording, I've been, I think you guys obviously are using Zoom as well. So we use Zoom, for the actual meeting itself, but we're using Audio Hijack to actually capture the recording. And we have a couple of other tools that we edit with, but I never end up using the expensive ones. Like I have Pro Tools, but I just don't use it because the editing and Audio Hijack and Fission and all that, it's enough for a podcast. You don't really need to do more than that. What about you guys?
So I have here. Since we're doing the visual tour,
He's got a Behringer board too, right, Brenton?
Oh, so right below me here, I've got just a tiny little Behringer. And then, I don't know if you can see it down there, but that's my Composer Pro compressor for my mic. And then I was at one point running the audio feedback from you guys into there. And then behind me is the Windows PC that I use a free product to record audio to straight to. And that's Grumpy Bear up on top of the rack there, if you can see him.
Nice.
Looks like he's taking the afternoon off.
Yeah.
And my office is tore apart right now, but what I use on my end is a Behringer UMC H404 audio capture device, and I've got a condenser microphone, just a
MXL.
The brand is escaping me. MXL.
Yeah.
MXL condenser microphone on a boom stand, and that's about all I'm using at the moment. I might revisit that when the office gets rebuilt.
This mic is a garbage $30 BM800 from Amazon, and I think it sounds amazing.
It does sound really good.
Well, you always end up coming out like it. You have this real bassy Howard Stern delivery. So I was wondering, do you change some of your settings?
No, it's the mic.
Okay, all right.
It's just this mic. It has a real good deep tone to it. I mean, it's hooked in through another Behringer USB interface. That's what gives it the phantom power, because my little soundboard doesn't have phantom power. But yeah, I mean, it's, between that and the noise gate, that's pretty much all I do, is just to, keep things quiet when I'm not talking.
Okay.
Nick, what do you guys do?
So John White is the audio nerd. I'm just the fun guy who shows up and helps with show notes and outlines and says stuff. But I have an Audio Technica mic. I think it was like $80. Got the arm and the pop filter. I originally started with the headset that Tony's using, just the Jabra one that we got when we started as employees. But the audio quality difference was pretty noticeable. So John just told me what he had. I bought one, and we use a platform called Squadcast.fm, and it will capture the audio in real time in your browser. The browser picks up your audio devices, headset and microphone, and so it records as we go, and it will progressively upload the audio. It saves a local cached version and eventually sends it all by the time we're finished recording. So we don't have a special device sitting on one of our desks. Seems to work pretty well most of the time, and then we use Zoom like as a backup if needed.
Oh, okay. Well, that's interesting. So you actually, this software that you're using, it's like a cloud software that actually captures the local recording of you, the local recording of John, and then it aggregates them and gives you a file to then either post and edit or do whatever you want to do.
Right.
Yeah,
he gets a file with each track. Each person comes in on a different track. He can put those together, and I think he uses Audacity for the editing. I chose not to learn how to do audio editing for now.
You're like John.
But I think at some point I'm going to have to learn.
John turns on his mic, spews a bunch of tech and smoke bombs. And then I do all the scheduling, the editing, everything.
Yeah, like Pete, you and I are like twins in that respect. Tony,
John and I are alike.
Yeah.
Yeah. John and Tony are at the ball, and we're hanging out with mice, cleaning the, yeah.
This is why you and I get along so well, Pete.
I thought it was the haircut.
I know.
So, guys, I know nobody here. Does a live show, but do you guys think there's any value in having callers that dial in? It's something I've played with in my mind.
I've wanted to try doing that, and we did like a live stream episode. Well, we did that was the one you and Jace were on.
Yeah, I tried one. It didn't work.
That's because of the guests.
No, it was a great episode actually, but
tech didn't work.
Yeah, but the problem, like, and part of it, like, if you were like doing the thing that Aaron Bewley's going to start doing on Twitch, that might work. But
yeah,
I think it would be interesting. I always thought it would be cool to do one like over the lunch hour, because you'd most likely be able to get some people to pop in on their lunch break and give you a call. But
that might be interesting.
Yeah. Just from the folks that do, I see that the VMware, the VMTM, which by the way should be on this podcast. Did you send out an invite? I mean, they're a VMware podcast, but anyway, they have some dial-in, right? They do a dial-in, but I think what I heard from some of the folks that it's like usually the same folks that just dial in every week. There's like a faithful few that end up contributing on the call-in. So I was just curious if that was something that would either add value or detract from what the product that you guys are putting out.
Yeah, Pete, you're talking about the talk shoe, right?
Yeah.
I don't know that we've ever thought that much about it. We tried the live show once, and obviously the tech didn't work. But I've always thought it would be cool to be able to broadcast live. We just haven't taken the time and the effort to make it work out. But maybe sometime in the future, if the community thinks there's value in that, and people could tune in, and at the oddball times we do it.
Yeah, I think that's the real problem. Is people are so busy everywhere that it's hard to get. It's hard to get a guest on in a window of time, much less have some random person call in and actually give you a valuable conversation.
Yeah,
right.
Random.
It's very different doing a live podcast than a pre-recorded. Like we did at VMworld. This year we did a VMworld live podcast as a session. And in US and in Barcelona.
Yeah, I listened to both of those. They're both good. Yeah.
That was interesting.
I felt your pain in the audio issues in Europe, though.
Oh, yeah. Because they just, whatever. It's not their fault. They're not set up to be recording for a podcast. But the audio quality was a little painful. But
the former live audio guy in me was just like, oh, I wish I could have been there.
Yeah, exactly. I wanted so bad to just like do a separate setup and push out to my, get all the mics and actually split it and also record it in my stuff. But I did not do that. I might do that next year.
It was still really good though.
The funny thing the funny takeaway from that I never would have dreamed is a bunch of people came up and was like, oh, it was really interesting to see you do the intro and the outro. I always hear it. And it was weird to see it live. And I was like, I don't know. I thought it was interesting feedback, you got all these great guests on talking about all this tech, and they're like, oh, the intro, the outro. That's interesting.
Yeah, I guess it would also depend on your listenership. How big is it? Because if it's not, I don't know. It feels like if it's not super far reaching, it'd be hard to do the live show and have people show up.
Yeah.
But, even in addition to schedules and such.
Yeah.
Well, I think when we did our attempt, what did we have? Like 2 or 3 people on the stream?
Yeah.
It wasn't much.
It was, I think it's one of those things of like, if we did it with regularity, it would build, but,
right. Yeah.
Yeah. Just how the show in general has built itself over time. But yeah, I mean, and that's what I like about not being pigeonholed into one specific topic is, we'll gain new audience. Like after this last thing of talking to Kyle Ruddy, like all of a sudden all these Kubernetes guys started following us and tweeting about the show. And, so.
And weren't you just saying the other day, Britton, that you had some customer that worked at a hospital in Indianapolis that is a listener? Randomly found that out? Yeah, so I got on a call for a customer to help them out with the POC thing, and the guy, the like IT director for this company, for this hospital, is just like, hey, are you the guy from the Gigacast? And I'm like, yeah. And he's like, oh, I love that show. I'm like, that's awesome.
That's always fun, right?
Yeah. So, and just to keep things anonymous, I'm not saying who it is or what it is, but, thank you for listening ultimately. And it's just, it's weird how like you get things like that start to come full circle, but.
Yeah, for sure. That's cool, man.
So I have one final question. We've talked a lot about tech. We've talked a lot about guests and some of the format changes. What overall, and we'll start with Pete, what overall do you think are the successful ingredients to a technology podcast?
Unmuting is a good start. So I've always been a bit of a sound quality Nazi. So I am a stickler for good sounding audio. I think that's important. And I think that's important because if people are focusing on your audio quality, they're not focusing on your content. You know what I mean?
Right.
So I like to take that off the table.
If you listen back to this episode, you're going to hate it, Pete.
No, but so to me, I always say, for us, it's the other point is to always, the hosts need to be curious, right? Like I've never been a fan of a podcast where the host is the smartest person in the room, and they'll, and I've seen this in other, I won't say who, but I've seen this in other companies and podcasts where it's like, somebody will be like, hey, tell me about this technology because my opinion of it is A, B, C, D, all the way to Z. And it's like, why did you have a guest on? And then the more you listen to it, you're like, you're not really the smartest person in the room, but man, you love to hear your voice. So to me, a good podcast is when the host is probably the least voice you hear, and they have the most questions, right? So I have a little sign on my desk that I remind myself all the time, ask more questions. And I think that's important. So being curious as a host is really, that makes a good podcast because your guest is going to make the show. So getting good, and that's the other thing, getting good guests that, and creating a dynamic where they're comfortable to talk. So I never excuse me, I never like to get people that just finished doing a presentation and they want to, people don't understand what podcasts are. So they want to come on and basically they want to give you the presentation that they've been giving in the executive briefing center or that they've given to a customer because that's their talk track. And they want to go through this PowerPoint, bullet by bullet. And so we pull them out of that area. So I really think a good conversation around that tech, which is why I always tell our guests, give me 3 items that are important to you. John and I will do the rest. We'll get you your points that you want to talk about, but we'll create it in a way that's, conversational, because just letting somebody just go through a presentation, heck, we could go to a V Brown Bag and do that. Like we don't need to look at a whole presentation. We want to have a conversation about it. So so for me, it's being curious, good guests, and good quality audio. Those are my three ingredients for a good podcast: are being curious, having good audio, and finding good guests.
No death by PowerPoint.
Exactly.
And Nick, what are your thoughts on that same question?
So I would say that you definitely want to be humble and vulnerable with your audience to let them know that you don't know everything, and that's why you have guests, and that's why you're trying to learn too, because I have to tell you, on every episode I'm learning something that I didn't know from my guest. And as Pete said, I'm trying my best to set it up and make them look good. Like when I'm selling someone on coming on the podcast, hey, we're here to make you look good. If there's part of this that you don't like, tell us, we'll take it out. So
Pete is right.
I think letting people know that you're yeah, exactly. Pete is right. That you're putting this information out there to help other people and not just have them hear your voice.
Yeah, good points. I mean, with some of the people that Britton and I have interviewed, it's just like so far over your head, but you grasp little nuggets. Right. Sometimes you just get a little nugget and then the light bulb goes off. You're like, I'm starting to get it. I'm not an expert, but I'm starting to get it.
Sometimes I learn in the edit.
Yeah, there you go.
Sometimes I listen to it in the edit. I'm like, oh, that's what they meant.
Like that's exactly what that's why I tweeted that after our last episode with Kyle Ruddy and Cody DeArclin, because I'm like, I'm listening to these guys talk while I'm recording the show, and I missed a whole bunch of stuff while recording it. And so I listened back to every episode just to make sure that it's, not so bad that I don't have to pull it. And, and I always pick up on something like, oh, that's what he said. And oh, wow, that actually, like, I actually learned something from my own show. Amazing.
Oh, yeah. That's the whole point.
Yeah.
And honestly, that goes back to good podcast hosting. Is you need to have a good co-host because you got to drive. You have to drive the show, right? So you need to be looking at the next point. You need to make sure you're checking your time. Hopefully, you're checking levels. You're making sure everything is in the show is going well, while your guest is explaining stuff. And so you got to have a co-host that's plugged in and listening, and you're listening. But 9 times out of 10, hopefully your co-host is way more plugged in than you probably are, because of the fact that you're doing much more. You're multitasking.
Right.
I had a friend who once reached out to me and said he wants to host a podcast, next year, and he's thinking about doing it. Which is a question for you guys. Do you get that a lot? People always ask, "I'm thinking about doing a podcast," and it's like, okay, here goes the talk track. Here's what I do, and here's what you could do, right? But this one guy was like, "I want to do a one-on-one interview style where it's just me and the guests, and I want to interview people." And that was one of the things I cautioned him. I said, "Okay, that's cool, but if you're recording and if you're doing 9 other things, making sure that the levels are good, making sure that that everything's working, you have to just be aware of that, because you might find yourself not fully retaining what they're saying."
Yeah, and then a lot of those like one-off, one-on-one podcasts that I hear, like I think people who just think, "Oh, I'm just going to do this and record it on my iPhone on a table." It
comes back to the audio thing.
Yeah, it comes back to the audio thing, and like that's why I like the microphone that gives me some,
very wide.
It gives
Bass.
more frequency tone, because it's people like it. This is the feedback I get, and it just if it's not listenable for more than 5 minutes, then nobody's gonna listen to it for an hour.
I need to adjust my settings so I could sound like you. Let's see. Check. Hey, okay. So does that sound different? So
like you're almost clipping now.
Pete, I love that you're wearing your own swag too.
It's comfortable. It's
They are comfortable
Yeah.
shirts.
I need to. If I send you did I send you a shirt first of all?
You did, and I wear it.
Okay.
I should have worn it today. I wasn't thinking.
And I should have wore your shirt today. What was I thinking? Oh yeah. But
Representing VMUG.
I need to get one. I need to get one of your hoodies.
Nice.
Yeah. I'll get you. I didn't get you one. Oh, you weren't at VMworld. Yeah.
So Tony, I owe you some Nerd Journey stickers.
Yeah, neither one of us were there this year.
Hit me up offline, and we'll make miracles happen.
That would be awesome.
Awesome. All right, are you guys ready to wrap? Because it's 5:00.
Yes, good swag is important.
Yes, the cheese coaster. Yes, I just dropped Kyle Ruddy's in the mail. So
you inspired me to do one. I saw yours, and I was like, oh, I need to get one of those. So.
Oh, you actually made coasters.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. That was my one regret from going to Palo Alto is I never got up to find Pat's office to see if it was on his desk.
You would have been disappointed.
I'm sure.
Who was it? It wasn't Pat. I think it was Michael Dell. I asked. I was like, we were at VMware. We just finished an interview, and I was like, you want a T-shirt? He was like, no. All righty. Take care.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Appreciate you.
Nice.
Yeah. All right.
Well, thanks for coming on, guys.
It's been a
fun
guys.
episode.
Pete
Thank
and,
you.
And Nick, thanks for hanging out a little extra time after Dean had to drop. And then I'm going to play us out. And
this was fun. Happy holidays, guys. Yeah.
Yes, happy holidays.
Have a good holiday.
Merry
happy
Christmas
holidays to our listeners.
Listening. And looking forward to a fun and amazing tech-filled new year. And I promise we will talk about more than just VMware next year. So, Merry Christmas, everybody. And once again, this has been a Gigacast episode 34 for Friday the 13th, 2019, December. And again, thanks to Mr. Yadin Porter de Leon, Pete Fletcher, Nick Corti, all of your extraneous co-hosts who couldn't make it today. Hopefully we'll do this again at some point and get everybody on like the Brady Bunch podcasts.
This is amazing.
Yes. Thank you, Pete. And, we'll get this posted here shortly for a wonderful holiday season, so everybody has something to listen to on their drives to the family. And Merry Christmas to all. To all a good night and Happy New Year. Drive safely. Tip your waitresses. Be good to people.
Bye for now.
Let's land this plane.